to this very special episode of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So we both have coffees today. That's fun.
I know, we do. We are both sitting. It's early in the morning. We're both sitting with our coffees, loving our lives, and about to talk a very special episode today.
Yeah. So we're still in that sweet spot of time off before things start up again. So I have some Baileys in my coffee. That's how I want to start this day.
Love it. Now that you're saying that, I feel like I should get a mimosa or something.
Do you have champagne?
I do, yes.
Ooh.
I know. So our special episode today is geared around New Year's. It's our New Year's special.
Yeah.
We're doing a 2022 wrap up. Of course, we don't have a full year to wrap up, but we started in March of 2022. So we're going to do a wrap up of our top 10 favorite books and why we're ranking them the way we do.
Yeah. And obviously, if we read them, we liked them in some way. So even our least favorites have special parts in our heart. Mm-hmm. I don't want any of my books to feel sad.
No. And it's very true. Obviously, I like all the books that we did. But obviously, if you've been listening, you know that some books I just like better than others. And I think that's obvious.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap them up and we're going to decide, we're going to do a top 10. We have not actually, so we've each written a top 10 and we have not shared with each other.
Yeah. So this could get feisty.
Yeah. So we could have the exact same. We could have completely different. I don't know.
I love it.
I'm excited. I'm excited to know what your top 10 is.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, before we kind of start, I know that I was a bit biased when putting them in order. I'm sure you feel the same way. But I just wanted to go over some of the things that I know I was biased about, but couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of books we read are the first books in series. I think they all are. Yeah. Or the second in one case. But I couldn't help myself but be influenced by the entire series in a lot of cases. In some cases, I feel like I was pretty good. But in other cases, I was like, no, the series disappointed me. So this is a lower spot than it maybe would have been.
Yeah, I agree. My rankings have to do with that as well, where stuff falls in the series, and in addition to that, characters actually played a big role for me, and whether I liked the characters, whether I didn't like the characters, whether I liked the OTP, the one true pair, how I felt about them, that actually influenced my decision quite a bit.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of want to get into, but I feel like it would be too hard to ask you because I don't really think, in some cases it did. If the pairing in the book didn't influence me, if it changed later on, I don't think. And that happens in a few of the books.
Right.
But it's interesting because there's so many different little things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also know that I definitely took into account, if I enjoyed reading them again. And, there's one book in particular that I know I hadn't read in a while and I loved the reread. So I definitely scored that one higher because I was, just so excited for that series.
Right.
But
yeah.
And then obviously the podcasting is
yes.
The books that we had a lot of fun with obviously scored higher for me than maybe some of the ones that, although I think we had fun with all of them. So I don't know.
We did, but I am around my friends and family, and I don't know if you will agree with me or if you'll disagree to be nice, but I don't think I'm particularly funny. Like, my family would not say, "Oh yeah, she's hilarious." I'm not, right?
Yeah, your
That's
sister
not.
might know after listening to this.
Yeah, but my sister
Yeah.
is sort of the funny one in the family. I'm not known for my humor,
Mhm.
but for a couple of them, I do remember like listening on the edit and being like, "Oh, yeah," like and laughing.
Yeah.
So the fact that I can make how bad is it? I say I can make myself laugh.
No, it's true though.
But there are a couple that I remember, like, listening to when I was editing and laughing and being like, "Ha ha ha, we were funny."
We're so
So,
clever.
yeah.
But it's funny too, because like in a lot of the episodes, we just make ourselves laugh anyway. So it's the same thing.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So I definitely also took that into account, especially for, like, the higher ones.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, without further ado, we are gonna get right into it. I'm super excited.
Me too.
So we're gonna start with obviously number 10, the number 10 spot, which is our lowest spot.
Yeah.
Uh, uh so my number 10 was Bitten.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'm shook.
Are you?
Yes. Okay.
So we did Bitten in June of 2022. It's a book by Kelly Armstrong. She's a Canadian author. Like, as a series, so this is the first book in her Women of the Otherworld series. And it follows Elena Michaels as she fights between her werewolf instincts and the devilish man who turned her into a werewolf, Clay, and the human life that she wants to have, and her boring human boyfriend, Philip. Um, and the book ends with Elena being the hero, saving Clay, who is our damsel in distress at that point. They catch a serial killer, and Elena accepts her werewolf life and accepts her relationship with Clay as her mate. Um, so the reason I picked this as my number 10, so I really enjoyed this book when I first discovered the series,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't really read it since then. And this book came out, I think, did we say like in the early 2000s?
Something like that.
And I just don't think it aged well.
I get
Like,
that.
there's a lot of dubious consent
Mm-hmm.
issues, and I guess, like, as much as I liked the series as a whole, I did tend to like Elena a bit better when she had accepted herself. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't as big a fan of their whole, like, of her whole, "Oh, I love Philip, but oh, I'm just gonna sleep around with Clay anyway."
Yeah.
Like, I didn't appreciate that aspect of her, and I just liked her better as the series goes
Rest.
further
Yeah.
progressed, yeah. And I think it was probably one of our like, I think it was one of our least um received, like, it was one of our least received months, I guess we'll say. Like, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I don't know if it was just old and not as many people were into it, but it just didn't feel like it got the same reception as some of our other episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why I put it as my 10. Like, I still
Yeah.
like the series, but the reread for me was actually quite a bit more problematic
Yeah.
than I thought it would be.
No, I completely get that. And like it did influence where I put it too, but I'm just surprised that it was your 10. But that's fair. um, so my 10 was The X Hex by Aaron Sterling. And
Oh.
So we did the X-Hex in October. I was just going to say we did the X-Hex in 2022. We did, yeah, October. And it's the first book in a series too, and there's actually a third book in the works, so I'm assuming that one will be out soon. It is, unsurprisingly, about exes. So Vivian Jones and Reese Penhallow are the main pairing, and they had a summer fling when she was 19, but Reese kind of led her on a bit, and in a drunken teenage heartbreak moment, Vivian and her cousin Gwen jokingly curse Reese. But it didn't end up being a joke. The book ends with them realizing that the town founding story is a lie, and eventually Reese and Vivian end up together. I feel like this one was always going to be my 10 because it's a book that I had never read before.
Yeah.
So and then like we were recording and I didn't know the ending while we were recording the beginnings of it. So like I feel like it was a bit harder to know what was important in the book. It was a bit harder to like, I don't know. I just found that to be a bit hard. And then also the relationship ending of the book just completely rubbed me the wrong way. I think the reason that I didn't love the book and the ending was because like there's a period of like 2 months where they just don't talk to each other. And then he just shows up and has a job. And I'm like, what? That's it. What? But there was...
Send her a snap or something.
Right? Like, this doesn't make sense in our age of technology. Especially, like, he has a techie job, so it's not like he doesn't know how to do technology. Yeah. But I know, like, books need plot. So you need the main characters not to know that the other one is in love with them type thing. But it just really felt too far in this book of like, obviously he's in love with her. Why can't she let him be?
Yeah, I agree. I felt like I agree with you in that the very end when they like separate, like he knows he's in love with her. Why doesn't he tell her? And then she's like saying goodbye to him and he's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll leave then. It's like, dude, you were going to tell her you loved her. Why are you stopping all of a sudden? Like,
yeah,
I see what you mean there.
Yeah. So that is my number 10. So my number 9, and this one might be a bit surprising. I don't know. And I kind of think that we could have had the same, but I thought we might have had the same last time. I don't know what's happening. I'm so confused. But mine is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But that's not, I've got a different one.
Okay. So we did Shadow and Bone in May, and it's the first novel that was published in the Grishaverse, which has many different books in its umbrella. And it's the first book in a trilogy that follows Alina Starkov, who's a normal girl who ends up being extraordinary. Yeah. So she starts as a normal soldier in the army, and it's discovered that she's like the prophesized sun summoner, which is a new kind of Grisha. And she's manipulated by her very hot mentor, the Darkling. And the book ends with her like leaving a big group of people, including the Darkling, to die and running away with her childhood best friend, Mal. So this book, I absolutely love the Grishaverse as a whole. Mm-hmm. I actually very much do like the first book in the series and the second book in the series, and most of the third book in the series.
Oh.
I don't like how the third book ends, which is like not normal for me because normally I'm very go with the flow about books and stuff. But there's just a better relationship that I wanted to win out, and it doesn't. And I can't really get into it without spoiling too much. But I really do think that I made this one such a low number because of the rest of the series, but I couldn't help it. Yeah. And also, I really don't like Mal.
Yeah. I mean,
those are my reasons.
see, I haven't actually read the rest of the series, which is terrible to say, but like I just never had the urge to like figure out what happens next in the story. And I've gotten
Yeah.
bits and pieces from you and of course
Yeah.
good old Wikipedia, because this is how I live my life. I always Google and Wikipedia things and endings and stuff. And I just never felt the need to like have to read on,
Yeah.
which is bad. Like I will say that.
It says something about the book.
Yeah, if I'm not interested in reading the next one, then that does say something.
Yeah. But on that note, the Netflix show Shadow and Bone, I did really enjoy. But I absolutely did not let that influence my placement of this on the list. Because I think I loved the show mostly for the crows anyway, so I felt like it wasn't fair.
Yeah.
But the second season is being released March of this year, so that's exciting. 2023.
Yeah. So my number 9 is Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo.
Oh,
Well, I know that it's your favorite. Well, it's one of your favorites.
Yeah, that's fine.
We read Six of Crows in November of 2022. Six of Crows follows a group of 6 teens in Ketterdam that go on an impossible heist. They are led by the charismatic and infamous Kaz Brecker. Most of them are hoping to make enough money to get out of Ketterdam or to get to a better place in the barrel. By the end of the book, they've completed the heist, but they're double crossed by the one who hired them in the first place. And one of our main characters, Inej, is kidnapped. So this is another book in the Grishaverse. So there are a couple of reasons why I put this my number 9. One, there was such a lack of sexy time.
I completely get that. Yeah.
Like there were emotionally developed relationships, and like I think we could sort of see the beginnings of 3 different relationships. But like they're all such children that I couldn't, I don't know, like I couldn't. And like understanding we're talking about fantasy books here, so there's a level of disbelief in all of them. Yeah. The fact that they were all like 16 and 17 and like these amazing like heist performers, and Kaz Brecker was like 17 and he like thought about these million different possibilities and everything like that, and like had contingencies for everything. It just like it stretched my ability of belief, we'll say. Like, yeah, I couldn't get behind them as characters being so young but also so adept, and like they didn't seem to make mistakes based on their age, which I feel like books of that, like when you do have 16 and 17-year-olds, they should be making mistakes based on their level of inexperience, and I find that they did not do that.
Yeah, I really think that in reading this series, I just bypassed the age and I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Plus, I will say the ending wasn't my fave. I don't like cliffhangers. I like at all. Yeah. So I didn't like that. And then the sequel, actually, even though I haven't read it, like, again, I've Wikipedia'd, I know what happens. You've told me certain things. And just knowing that in the sequel, like 2 of our 3 main couples don't have their like happily ever after sort of. And really, I don't know much if the 3rd couple gets a happily ever after. I know that there's an implication of togetherness, but anyway, I really don't like that 2 of the 3 couples that we sort of see coming together don't end up together. And that makes it a really big downer for me. Because like, what's the point then?
Yeah, I get that.
I know you're a lot more like, ooh, an ending where no one's happily ever after. Like you sort of are more into that than I am.
Yeah, unless it's supposed to be like a happily ever after, and then they don't do it. I'm like, what the fuck is this? But if it's like,
Yeah.
If it's a fantasy book or like a YA book, I don't mind.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, it was just a downer for me. So we're gonna move on now to number 8. My number 8 is Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wild.
So we did that book in August. It's the first book of 6 in the Vampire Academy series. It follows Rose Hathaway and Lissa Dragomir as they navigate high school, vampire politics, guard duty, and their love lives, all while there's an invisible threat ahead of them at every turn. The book ends with Rose and Christian saving Lissa from her uncle, who was trying to use her magic to keep him alive. And there's a spicy scene between Rose and her mentor, Dimitri, when they are under a spell. So this is my number 8 for a couple of reasons. I just found it sort of like meh for me. Like, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It just sort of in the, like, and I feel like a lack of reaction, the fact that I didn't love it or hate it, like when thinking about it, sort of means it's pretty low down on the list.
Yeah.
So like, again, we discovered this book when we were in high school or just, around there. And when I read through it, obviously I really loved it. But then reading it as an adult, it was a lot more dramatic and high schooly than I remember. Yeah. And obviously that makes sense. If I read it in high school, it doesn't feel like super young and high schooly, but now I'm an adult and I teach. So it just felt really like, I don't know, just a bit high schooly. And then the whole relationship thing with Rose and Dimitri, like, obviously I do like them together, but just the position I'm in now as a teacher and like him with her, it just sort of like adds to the ick factor a little bit.
Yeah. I get that.
And then on top of that, the show sort of brings it down a little bit as well, because I think we did the react episode to the first episode of the show.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't mind the first episode, and I think I watched the first 3 or 4, but they just changed it so much, and like, I never did finish the season because I just was like, this is too different. Like, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I completely agree. I think we watched like 3 episodes after the first one together, and then like I might have watched another 1 or 2, and I watched them with my partner Jeff, and he's like, he still has them, and he's like, are we ever going to watch these? And I'm like, no. And he's like, but I want to know what happens to my favorite characters. He doesn't even know their names. He's just joking. But I'm like, I can't watch any more of it. Like, it's not bad. I think if I hadn't have read the books, I might have liked it, but I just can't get past it.
But do you know what?
Which is so many things. So many books do that.
But do you know what, though? I don't even know if I would like it if I hadn't read the books, because I find that they just bombard you at the beginning with so much information, and it's I found it really confusing. Like, the beginning bit, it was just sort of like, what? Like, even having read the books and understanding the world of Moroi and Dampier and Strigoi and all that, like, I feel like they did not do a good job with the world building.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't look at it objectively, and like I said, I don't think I'm ever going to finish the series, which I'm kind of sad about. But also, if I like don't care to watch it, then obviously I don't care about it. So okay, so my number 8 is A Discovery of Witches. Yeah, I find it so crazy that we haven't had a repeat yet. Like, we are picking there's 6 different books that we've had so far for the first 3. Wild.
Yeah.
So A Discovery of Witches was our first book, actually, and we did it in March of 2022. It's by Deborah Harkness, and it's the first book in the All Souls trilogy. And that book series is about Diana and Matthew, and they develop a forbidden relationship between basically a mortal 20 or 30-year-old witch and a thousands of years old vampire. And that's not part of my problem, obviously. The book ends with them going into the past, which is a real cliffender. Jesus Christ. Jesus. Oh my god. Yeah, it's a real cliffhanger, to be honest. But we have read the other books in the series, so that isn't really what influenced where I put it on the list. I liked it. I liked it a lot more the first time I read it, I think, than I did this time.
Yeah.
It's one of those books that, like, when you dissect it, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, the red flags were a flying.
they were, yeah.
It was still, obviously, I still very much enjoyed it, but Matthew was very old.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things that I was like, I can't get past this, of this a thousands of year old being being so taken by this 30-year-old because she's just special.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like that's a lot of books are like that. But when I first read them, I think I was in a phase of like, maybe I'm special. Maybe something like that'll happen to me someday. And now I'm just a jaded bitch. So I'm like, ugh, how foolish. So, you know, that's basically why I put it there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear where you're coming from. I can't say too much else. Like, I'll get more into it when I get to it on my list. But I totally agree. I will say that, like, I found the second book a little bit more problematic because so the author Deborah Harkness is actually she's actually a historian. So she put in a lot of historical events because at the end of book 1, you did just say that they go back in time for book 2. And so I just found that she didn't explain a lot of the historical events that were mentioned and that were like pivotal parts of the story. Were not really explained well. Like, they were sort of like explained with a historian's perspective, you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, obviously everyone's gonna know about the witch hunt in France in the 1500s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, well, no, not really. Like, I'm not bad on my history, but I do not know the ins and outs of that. And like all these like prolific historical figures that our characters were meeting. And it was just sort of like, you might need to explain a bit more who these people are, why they're important. Anyway, that sort of was sort of for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. To be honest with you, and this might just make me sound dumb, but I just like kind of bypassed that it was real history, and like just was like I knew some things obviously were true, but I didn't like, I don't know. I just was like, she's just making shit up for some of it.
But which is fine. But at the same time, like, if you're going that route, then I feel like it needs to be explained even more. Like, I find she just like,
oh, true.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just some of the stuff that was discussed, I feel like needed to be explained like I'm 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what the people that are reading your book, you don't know what they know. So like, if you're including this historical aspect, then you need to explain it like people are 5. And regardless of whether it happened or not, if it didn't happen in real life, then you really need to explain it, because instead you're glossing over it. I'm getting really heated about this. I feel like I'm getting more heated about it now than I was when we read this.
No, I don't even think we talked about. Oh no, because this is the second book.
Yeah,
we haven't talked about the second book. Yes. And I think, but the thing about, like, I read these books and I really enjoyed them. I only think I've read the second one once.
Yeah.
So I think if I did reread it and started like nitpicking the second one, I'd come up with a lot of these things too. But like, that's how I felt about the first one. The first read, I was like, oh, this book is great. And then the second read, literally, one of our episodes is called like Red Flags, because there's just so many that were like, holy shit, did we just read this and bypass them?
Yeah.
And I 100% did, which is like another book that we read as well. But
yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah. So my 7 now, I guess.
Yeah.
So this one I think is a bit controversial.
Mm-hmm. Oh dear.
No, it's fine though. But my number 7 is Crescent City.
Oh, do you know what though? That doesn't surprise me for you.
Yeah. So this one is one that gets harmed by the series, which I don't think is fair of me to do, but I'm doing it because this is my list, damn it.
I know. I love that you're talking about the series though. There's 2 books so far.
I know. But the second book came out this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, we read Crescent City in April of 2022. It was our second book. And it's actually called House of Earth and Blood. And it's the first novel in the Crescent City series. And it follows potential suspect Half-Fae Bryce and Electric Angel Hunt as they try to solve the murder of Bryce's best friend, Danica. There are plans for like at least 3 books with the possibility of more. And the second novel, House of Sky and Breath, was released in 2022 as well. I think in March, but I can't be sure. Anyway, so the first book ends with Bryce getting a shit ton of power and saving Hunt's life. And kind of the world, I guess. Or the city. Yeah. From like demons coming in.
Yeah.
A lot happens. And that's part of my problem with the series. Is there's just so much happening, and there's so many people, and there's so many different types of species of humanoids. Anyway, there's just so much on the go, which I know is very fantasy, and that's fine. But the second book I really struggled to read it. I don't know why, but I just didn't care, which is so bad. But like, I didn't really care about what happened to most of the characters except for one. And it really brought down how I feel about the first book, because it's all the same characters. And I'm like, if I don't care about them, then obviously I didn't become attached to them in the first book. Like, it's still a good book. A lot happens. And I like love a badass woman, but I don't know. I feel like it's a lot of the same with her other series. It's a different storyline, but it's like badass female gets power. Anyway, I just didn't love it. So that's where I am.
I know. I remember you reading the second book, and I remember, did you finish it before me?
You got a spoiler for the thing at the end.
I did, yeah. But I can't remember if you still finished it before I finished it, because I had a spoiler before I actually finished it. The spoiler, the ending of the second book really clinched it in a good way for me.
It didn't for me, so that's also why I didn't like it, because that's something that I don't want.
Yeah, I can see. I'm all for it. I'm like, yes, this is amazing. Like, I love that she's playing with it that way, and there are so many awesome theories that have come up since that ending, that twist ending came out. Like, it's got people talking and thinking, and like, it sort of changes so much on what you think about certain characters, and like, maybe some people aren't as genuine as you expect them to be, and like, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I can see that. It's something that I have heard her say she wasn't going to do in interviews, and then she did it, and I was like, I feel betrayed.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
But I also was just like, I don't love it. Also, my favorite of her 3 series is Throne of Glass. So that's just like always going to be my number 1 forever.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I got to say on that.
Okay. So my number 7 is actually Discovery of Witches.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
Close.
Yeah. So even though, again, like, we read this book as adults, this wasn't a book that we read as teenagers and then like brought back into our adult life. We read these books as adults, but like you've said, rereading it and like discussing it, we found a ton of red flags, a ton of tropes that I had initially overlooked. So like that was problematic. The reason I'm rating it as a 7 over like putting it lower down on the list is just because it was our first book. So I'm giving it nostalgia points.
Yeah, because of the podcast. That's fair.
So that's my reasoning for placing it as a 7, even though, and like I will say that I thought we were funny.
Yeah.
We also, like, I don't know, we hadn't really developed our system for the first, I don't even know if it was the whole book that we didn't have our system down.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I can't really remember, but I don't know, I just like that it was our sort of our entry into this journey and adventure, and so that's why I put it at a 7.
Yeah, I like that.
So, moving on to number 6. My number 6 is Shadow and Bone.
Ooh, we're getting into some repeats.
We are getting into some repeats now. So I did the opposite of you. So you said you placed yours so low on your list, and you did not let the show influence your decision. I actually did let the show influence my decision, which is why I rated it as high as I did.
Yeah.
I actually I like the show more than the book.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with this book is like, there's a problem. And we went hard when we read this book. We went hard for the Darkling. Like, we were both like, yes, Darkling, we love you. And I just feel like, that there's a problem with your OTP when you root for the villain to get with the main character. Right?
Yeah.
So like that's a problem. But again, so I'm rating it high because like, and I know 6 is not super high, but it's high-ish. It's in the middle. I'm rating it that way because I liked the show. I like Elena a little bit, and I love the Darkling. I don't like Mal.
Yeah.
But like, again, so at the beginning of this, I said that I was doing stuff for characters. This is one of those ones where I rated it a bit high because of the characters, because of the Darkling, and because of Elena.
Yeah. And I think you watched the show before you read the books.
I did
too. So it's hard to not let it influence.
Yeah.
When you do that. Yeah. So my 6 is Bitten.
Oh,
another repeat. So I do agree with almost everything you said about this book, but I am also a fan of a bit of dubious consent in books, which I know is a bit spicy to say, but
yeah,
reading is not real life. And I know, like, we had this conversation multiple times, and it almost made me dislike the book more because I like had to keep bringing it up. But I loved it.
Yeah.
But I also love the story too, and like the struggle and the fact that she couldn't keep away from Clay because like I don't know if it was explicitly stated, but like they end up as like basically mates because they're wolves and like they belong together, and like I just love them as a couple.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I actually haven't read the entire series because there's just too many books and I couldn't make myself at the time. Maybe I will try it someday. But yeah, I loved them. So I had to put this one higher.
Yeah. And that's valid. I will say that, like, obviously the series, like, it is a really good series. There are, how many books in it? Like 16 books in the series or something?
I think it's like 13 and then a like story about the guys.
Maybe. There's a
Something like
it's
that.
a ridiculous number of books.
Yeah.
Um,
And like you do when you're reading that many books by one author, you get like the sex scenes get a bit tired because there's only so many different adjectives that like an author uses themselves, and then also like the writing, you want to read about something else, so it is a struggle.
yeah. Um, yeah, I just I am like the thing that like, again, I love the books. I read them all.
Mm-hmm.
I think she does a really good job of linking all of them together in some way. However, my issue is I'm less of a fan of like point of view, like character jumping. So
Yeah.
like really only the first 2 to 3 books have Elena as a main character, and then there's one, I
Mm-hmm.
think number 6 or 7. The rest follow all of the other women that we encounter in the series and like all these other supernatural women. So
Yeah.
like it's I don't even know if I would recommend you, like, yeah, I think you should read them all, but like don't do it because you like Elena and Clay because they're barely in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's actually in the third book, I think we're introduced to Paige. She's a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And she's actually in the series more than Elena is in the series.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what I even read.
I thought you stopped at the Jack the Ripper one.
I
The
did. Yeah.
Frostbite.
That one just got too, that's just too far for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I wouldn't be so far now, but like at the time I was like, supernatural and time travel, like this is just unbelievable.
I thought it was just the ghost of Jack the Ripper, wasn't it?
I
Like
don't
a
remember.
spirit? I
Possibly.
don't know.
I honestly, I don't remember at
I
all.
don't either.
Um, but yeah, so it's still a good book. I have it as 6. That's like pretty high on the list of
Yeah.
books. I love it.
Yeah.
So my 5 is actually Akatar.
Mine too.
Oh my
We have
god!
a match.
Amazing! We had a match. Oh, I thought that you were gonna be sad. Yay!
No, mine is totally, yeah. So we have the same 5. Yay!
Yay!
I don't have to hold anything
So,
back.
so we read A Court of Thorns and Roses in September, and it's written by Sarah J. Maas. It's the first of 4 books and 1 novella in the series.
So
And there are
far,
plans for
yeah.
there's plans for 2 more novels and possibly another novella, I think. I don't know if that's changed. We'll see when they come out.
Yeah.
So Akatar is a take on the Beauty and the Beast tale, and it follows Feyre, who's a 19-year-old girl trying to keep her poverty-stricken family alive until she runs into the wrong sort of trouble in the woods. She's taken to the Fey world where she meets Tamlin, the High Lord of the Spring Court. And the book ends with Feyre dying, but then being brought to life as a Fey because she saved the Fey world. And she gets to live her happily ever after with Tamlin. Yeah, so this one is my number 5 because the first time I read this book, I didn't care. I didn't like them. I think this one, for me, gets a bit of a boost because the series is good.
Yeah.
But I didn't love the first book. Honestly, the first half of the first book, I was like, what is even happening? When they finally go under the mountain, I did kind of get into it because, like, it's interesting. A lot of stuff is happening. But before that, I was like, am I supposed to like anybody in this book? Like, I didn't even really like Feyre because, like, she was like, oh, I love him, but I can't say it. I'm just going to go home. And I was like, what? Why? Yeah. This doesn't make sense. Yeah. And then obviously with our reread, the red flags are too numerous to count. So it was just like a slap in the face. But yeah.
I agree with you. So I put this as a 5, and like I'll say this is my favorite series. But the first book is not my favorite book. Like I'm more into the second book, third book. Like I put ACOTAR at 5, like sort of lowish in the middle. Because again, like I love the series, but obviously any book which has Tamlin as the good guy upsets me. Like less Tamlin, more Rhys, please. And like I will say that the bait, but like again, I really enjoyed the bait and switch, but that doesn't happen in the first book. In the first book, you get this assumption that Feyre's going to live her happily ever after. And then when you do your reread after reading the second book and then going back to the first book again and reading through, there are so many red flags and you're just like, yeah. So yeah, like
how was I so blind?
Yes, 100%. And I really think that is talent as a writer to like initially make you like appreciate the relationship and sort of bypass all of Tamlin's like problematic behaviors, and then in this read through be like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I put it at a 5 too, because I just, Tamlin, bleh. Lucian, bleh. I don't like.
It's fair. Completely makes sense.
Okay, so now my 4. I put actually Throne of Glass.
Ooh.
Yeah, so Throne of Glass is my 4. So we did Throne of Glass in July of 2022. So it is the first of 8 books in a series of the same name. It introduces our main character, Selena Sardothian, who starts the book off imprisoned because she is an infamous assassin, even though she is only 16. She is given a choice that she cannot refuse and has a small chance at freedom. The book ends with her winning a tournament to become the king's champion / assassin. And also, she is ending a budding relationship with the crown prince. And actually, I sort of lowly ranked this one because I love the series. Maybe not as much as you. Like, I think for you, you're a Throne of Glass series fan. I'm an ACOTAR series fan. Obviously, I still love Throne of Glass, but not as much as A Court of Thorns, like ACOTAR. So I love the series, but I much prefer the latter half of the books, like books 4 through 7, as opposed to books 1 through 3. Like I feel like Selena doesn't really come into her own, and like I honestly sort of feel like they're almost 2 completely different sets of stories.
Yeah, and I feel like part of it is that she was so young when she wrote it, and I don't know if she had fully developed her ideas anyway on it until after, type thing. But that's just me speculating about it.
Anyway, but yeah, so I just don't prefer Selena in this iteration. I much prefer her when she sort of comes, not that she's not come into her own in this. I don't feel like I feel like she develops as a character, but I think her badassness is always there, and like she's always like super confident and stuff. But I feel like she really comes into her own in the latter half, like starting in Heir of Fire.
Yeah, I get that completely. It's almost like the first 2 books in the series are really like a prequel. You don't really get into the main part of the story until later on. It's how it feels.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Anyway, so that's why I've sort of put it at number 4. Like I love the series, which is why the series has boosted it, like, for me, but the
4 is pretty high.
Yeah, but the first book I'm sort of like, nah. And again, not a ton of romance. I'm not a huge fan of Dorian. Like, don't come for me. I don't dislike him. He's just like, he's not my favorite.
Yeah, I actually like him much better later on.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
He's not my favorite here either, but this is the fun of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 4 is 6 of Crows.
Okay.
So that was your 9, I think.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Yeah, I like the story. I do think I absolutely just bypass the fact that they're teenagers, which I'm fine with. I just imagine that they're older in all of these things that they're doing. But I just love the story. I love the characters. I did originally read the duology back to back, so I didn't have any issues with a cliffhanger. But I completely understand not loving the cliffhanger because it is a very big one.
Yeah.
But I love all six of the crows. They're like some of my favorite characters written in books.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Like I don't dislike the characters. I just the age thing really bothers me, and then the like couples, like I just want the couples to all be together and happy and in love and like together forever.
Mm-hmm. I get that. My number 3 is actually Throne of Glass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're
So we're
close.
pretty close. Yeah. So like I said, this is my favorite of Sarah J. Maas's series, but these first 2 books are just not it.
Yeah.
Really. And like I love them, but not enough. So
yeah.
Like I need them and I'll reread them. Like I actually reread Throne of Glass. Well, I listened to the audiobook in December, but mostly because I had lent the book to my niece who's 10. So I was like, she was asking me things about it and I was like answering her and saying things, and then she was like, "Oh, this is happening now." And I was like, "Oh, so this just happened." And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Shit, am I giving her spoilers?" So I re-listened to it so that I would be fresh on it so we could talk about it.
Yeah, makes
and
sense.
Like the first time I read this book, you had actually sent it to me, and I read it on a plane, and I just like couldn't stop reading it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And like the series only gets better, so it's like big fan.
Yeah.
So number 3 it is.
Yeah. So the series boosted it for you as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because like you can't not think about the series when you're judging these things. I think it's so hard.
So my number 3 I think is going to be quite a surprise for you.
Oh my god.
So I actually put The X-Hex by Aaron Sterling in my number 3 spot.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I actually liked the book a lot more than I thought I would. It's very like it was predictable, which I appreciated. A lot of the books that we've actually done for this for our chats have been large endeavors, right? And there's a lot of plot, a lot of stuff to get through, and I appreciated the simplistic nature of this one. It was a nice break from the really serious heavy stuff, where this one felt a lot more light and like a very simple, like, hey, it's a second chance lovers trope. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
And had some good sex scenes, which I appreciated. And I liked the main couple. I liked them as individuals, and I liked them together. So even though I do agree with you that they could have solved all their issues with one simple conversation, but then there wouldn't be a book. And I also like, I really liked it. It just felt like the book version of a Hallmark movie.
Yeah,
like
I can see that.
It felt it. I don't know. It's just like a feel good like October book. Like fallish, Halloweeny, like felt like this very idyllic little sleepy town with like everybody getting really into Halloween and like college camp. I don't know. It just felt like I don't know how else to explain it. It felt like a Hallmark movie in book form.
Yeah. And I think we even said while we were reading it that we would love to go there for Halloween. Like, big fan.
So yeah, so I just liked it, and there was not really, I don't think there were a ton of red flags in the relationship besides that weird ending where they didn't talk for 2 months and then all of a sudden he shows up. But, like, apart from that, I don't think we had much in the way of red flags, and I feel like considering how many red flags we found in relationships of the other couples that we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
I feel I feel like the fact that there weren't really any just boosts it.
Yeah. And I feel like she even tried to make it so that he was like the bad guy in the beginning. And I was like, this isn't being a bad guy. Like his father has him betrothed to somebody. That doesn't make him a bad guy.
No, and it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I have to go home and break it off with her," and then the girl is, like, really offended.
Yeah.
"What? You have to go you have a fiancé?"
That
It's
you
like
probably haven't even met. Like,
and he's like, "Yeah, like, I'm going to break up with her." It's like, "How very dare you?"
yeah.
So, yeah, I appreciated that.
I get it.
So, um, moving on, the number 2 spot for me, is, Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood.
Yeah.
And I know obviously you have feelings about it. I've already mentioned some of my feelings about it. I just love the story and meeting Bryce and Hunt and like really getting some great world building up front.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sarah J. Mass actually does a really good job in the world building. Like I remember us having the discussion of there's a lot of world building in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, and I really liked that and really appreciated that. I don't know why. I just found the world building really nicely done.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't super boring to read through the world, even though the first like 50 pages were like explaining everything about this new world.
Mm-hmm.
I found it was done well and
Yeah.
not boring. And I also think she was the most comprehensive, and maybe that just comes from the fact that she is writing this as an adult, but I
Yeah.
found it the most comprehensive in terms of world building of her 3 series that we've discussed.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with that.
Um, so I just appreciated that. I like Bryce, and again, just one of those things that she does so well is writing about wounded people and people that have trauma in their lives and how they're like broken and how they're like traumatized and then them healing along the way. I really appreciate reading through those journeys,
Mm-hmm.
and I find that maybe that's why I also really like the Akatar series, because we see the same thing with Feyre, and like we see her get broken and then heal along the way. With Bryce, it's we don't really get to know her as well before she has that traumatic event, and I just
Mm-hmm.
really like, I don't know, I like getting to know her as she is trying to
Healing.
heal.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate that there's a really slow burn, like maybe even a slower burn with her and Hunt than there is with Feyre and Reese.
Yeah.
And I sort of like it, but I also really appreciate that they sort of start off not liking each other, but then become friends before they,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I feel like with Feyre and Reese, there's always been an idea of he has a thing for her.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's sort of we always saw where it was going. I honestly, when I first read Crescent City, the first half of the book, I was like, is this guy going to be the love interest or is it going to be someone else? Because it's sort of like they were just getting to be friends.
Yeah.
So I just like that. And then this is another one where I thought we were actually decently funny. Like during this month, I thought I remember editing and laughing out loud a couple of times. So
yeah.
I appreciated it that way.
That's fair. I like I think part of my issue with it too is it was so long. So I had issues with like the book took so long to read, and then also trying to condense it for this. I feel like that kind of put a damper on it too for me.
Mm.
So, but yeah, many things I think about many books. So my number 2 is Akamath.
Mm.
So we just finished A Court of Mist and Fury in December. It is also by Sarah J. Maas, and it's the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and it continues Feyre's story, who, like we said before, is a human who risked it all for love, and how she's handling her new life as an immortal fae with Tamlin. So much happens in this book. And eventually, Feyre finds her mate, Rhysand, and they start to heal from their trauma together. But then, in the end, Feyre sacrifices her, not her life, but like her livelihood and her newfound family and friends, and goes back to Tamlin and the Spring Court.
Yeah.
So I love this book. Obviously number 2 is a high.
Yeah.
A high number. There's nothing bad I can say. I love Rhys. I do maybe have more issues with him later on, but in this book, I was a big fan. Mm-hmm. I think Feyre definitely developed as a character, and I did start to relate more with her. Like we've said a million times, the trauma and the healing from the trauma and mental health in the book really just resonated and was so good and well written. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have much bad to say about this book at all. I loved it.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun, and it was our birthdays.
Yay!
Yay! So, unless you want to say anything else, I don't think you do, because I'm like keeping note of which ones are your numbers next to mine, so I know what you have left anyway.
I know what you have left too.
Yeah. So my number 1 is Vampire Academy.
What a surprise!
What a surprise! I just absolutely love this series. I love Rose. I love Dimitri. I love Dimitri so much. So much. I loved the shitty movie. Like I said already, I didn't love the series, but I do like Dimitri in the series, and I still follow him on Instagram because he's hot. But yeah, I love the dynamics. I love the relationship between Rose and her friend, and how they're like die hard for each other, and it's just a good portrayal of a healthy female friendship. I love a forbidden romance. When I was reading this book, I was trying to take notes, and then I just couldn't, so I just read the whole book through, and then went back and read it again so I could actually take notes on it and have it ready for a podcast.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So a big fan. My number 1.
Love it. I don't dislike it, obviously. Mm-hmm. I didn't like it as much as you. I read the book before I watched the crappy movie, so I don't like the crappy movie. And then the series brought it down for me. And do you know what else brought it down for me? Was the secondary series. There was a spin-off series.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even remember what it was called.
Bloodlines.
That also brought it down for me, because I read up to number 4 to 5 of that series, the Golden Lily, I think it's called. And that sort of brought it down for me too. Like, just, I don't know. I liked it not as much, obviously, as you, but I'm happy it's your number 1.
I also think I read up to 4 of the Bloodline series, and I just don't care about those characters.
Yeah.
So I've been like slowly picking away at it throughout the years, but I just love this series. So
good.
Yeah.
Which means my number 1, was there ever any doubt, is A Court of Mist and Fury. Yeah. So, like, obviously it's my number 1. The fact that I got to reread it and like dissect it makes it amazing. I have nothing bad to say about it. I got to plead my case on why I love it so much, which like I love to do. And I don't know, I just love to see again, like we've talked about a million times, Feyre's like healing journey. And I also love how we got to see her develop relationships with other people, not just Reese. Like, yeah, so the fact that we got to see Feyre's relationships develop with everybody in the inner circle, not just Reese, like and why she sort of feels so strongly about them as a whole, not just Reese, and just her discovering herself. I don't know. I just like, again, I have nothing bad to say about this book, and I just love it so much. And
Yeah.
that's why it's my number one. And like, obviously, I'm tatted out for it. So like, I don't know how I could have picked a different book.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So that's our top 10, people.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. I'm shocked that so many of ours are different. Like I think we only had one that was the same.
Which is funny because it was number 5. But like my one was your 8, my 10 was your 3. Like we were all over the place.
Yeah.
A Discovery of Witches was kind of close. You were 7 and I was 8. And Throne of Glass, you were 4 and I was 3. And obviously Akamath,
Yeah.
1 and 2. But like everything else was really just thrown up
Wild.
in the air, shuffled around, and I love it.
Yeah. But that just goes to show you how different people can have, like, we literally discussed all of these books together and still had such wildly different impressions of them. So I don't know, just goes to show that everything is subjective. My opinions and your opinions might not be the same, but we agree that we love all of these books regardless.
Exactly. And I'm really excited for the books we're going to be reading this year in 2023.
Oh my God, I can't believe you just said 2023 and that like blows my mind.
I know. It's very wild. Very wild.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm also really excited. We haven't cemented all of our books for the next year
At all. Even a little bit.
January we got, but yeah, so but I'm excited to hopefully find some new favorites and discuss some old favorites maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I'm sure we'll discuss a few old favorites.
But yeah. But yeah, so I guess that wraps up this wrap up of 2022. We hope that you enjoyed it and had fun, and maybe this is going to make you want to go back and read some of your own favorites or have a listen to some of our months if you want. Up to you. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts or any like stories you've got of the year on anything you've read, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Coffee and Co-Read.
So we'll be back on Friday for our first episode of A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. So we hope that you are following along. And if you want to read along, you can read chapters 1 to 5. And we'll get into that on Friday. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.